Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod Neuroscience Edition. We have Jonathan Hacker with us. He's a student, neurotechnologist, researcher, and the founder and CEO at NeurGear. We're going to talk about this company today. This podcast is presented to you by podfire.com. If you want to start or scale your podcast, go to podfire.com. John, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about yourself and NeurGear.
Well, thank you, Charles. So my name is John Hacker. I am a biomedical engineer by training. I've essentially already graduated, but I graduated at the end of this May. And this company has been practically a lifelong dream for me. I started this when I was 11, and it's been going ever since. And what we do is we build ultrasound products to help people relax. And in the case of the ZenBud, which is our flagship product, it's a headset. You put it on, you wear it for 5 minutes, and you feel substantially calmer. It's particularly what it's doing is you have two systems in your body. One of them's a fight or flight system, and the other is rest and digest. What we're doing is increasing the activity of that rest and digest system, which helps you feel calmer, can help build stress resilience, and a number of other things as well. If your people are interested, feel free to check us out. ZenBud.health. We'll be doing a full launch very soon. Right now, it's still in the pre-order state, but that should be switching over any day now.
So the waves stimulate the vagus nerve. Is that what's at play here, and what's the science?
For sure. So yes, the waves stimulate the vagus nerve, which actually so it depends on how in-depth technical detail we want to get, but I can go pretty deep on the mechanisms of this. But essentially, you can think of it, each nerve is like a row of doors, is one way to think about it. And what the ultrasound does is it knocks on one of those doors, which causes it to open. And then that'll cause a chain reaction of doors opening, which essentially is the neuron being activated. This is the mechanism that ultrasound stimulates any nerve, which it's kind of weird, but ultrasound is both newer and not newer than electrical stimulation because we've been stimulating nerves with electricity for a very long time. There's some people that claim even all the way back to the Greeks, we've been stimulating nerves with electricity, but with electric fish and eels, I believe. It's kind of debatable if that's really the same type of technology we have today. That being said, the ultrasound stimulation as a modality was developed by the Fry brothers around the 1940s, so right in around World War II. And it's very, very interesting how long it's been around. But the fact of the matter is we really haven't been pushing it until more recently, to like the last 20, 30 years. And part of that comes down to technological feasibility. It hasn't really been feasible to have, especially a wearable ultrasound stimulate system for stimulation until more recently. And also safety data and efficacy data, which has been built through time. I mean, the fact of the matter is we use ultrasound for diagnostics. We use it to look at babies. And that generates a lot of good data and a lot of good safety data. But when ultrasound was first coming out, we were very skeptical of it. And it took a while for us to be like, okay, this is indeed safe. And it could be something.
Right. How did you tested the first prototypes on yourself?
I just put them on. I mean, so before, and I especially say this with self-experimentation in general. First off, if you're leading a company like this, you have to be the first one. If you're not, it means you don't trust your dev team. Which make sure you can trust your dev team. That's number one, and ideally be a part of it as well. So I was an integral part of the development process of our first production units and our first units in general. And actually, way back when we started the company, we were a transcranial ultrasound company, not a vagus nerve stimulation company. That was a while ago, and it's a completely different ballgame as far as safety and efficacy goes. But we were confident based off of our test results that the output was within safe levels and would be emulating cranial topography, which is a very commonly used diagnostic that has no bad side effects. And so we did it, and we didn't see any negative side effects. We saw some minor improvements, and then it took us a while to find vagus nerve stimulation and decide that's the direction we wanted to go with this. But there's just so much potential there, and it's so under-tapped, especially with current electrical methods. Like, I can go into the detail here, but ultrasound is such a superior method to stimulating nerves than electricity everywhere. I'm even talking implants, but that gets into a completely different conversation. So we've actually seen some rather stellar results using ultrasound to stimulate the vagus nerve, and I'm really excited to see what the dev team comes up with next.
So the first version was intercranial. So let's say that there were spikes. You know, we've seen these headgears for athletes with a bunch of spikes. This one, it seems that it goes in your ear, right? So is it like conducting to that ear bone? I forgot what that one was called.
So you're specifically referring, you could be referring to the xiphoid process. And there's a couple different like bone conduction headphones out there. That's not really the mechanism here. We're actually aiming for something that's in the ear. And we're actually aiming for the auricular branch of the vagus nerve. Auricular sounds really fancy, but really just means the ear branch of the vagus nerve. And you actually do also have a cervical branch or a neck branch of the vagus nerve as well, because it runs all throughout your body. Vagus means wandering in Latin. And there's a lot of companies that actually stimulate the cervical branch of the nerve today. Though there is a ongoing debate between the people that stimulate the auricular branch versus the cervical branch, which one's more effective and which one's more safe. I'm on the auricular side of the situation because there's a lot of other stuff going on in your neck, which is not the vagus nerve. And a lot of these therapeutics nowadays and a lot of the different devices that are out there just blast energy. There's really no specificity to them. And it's almost impossible to get specificity with electricity unless you have some very complex equipment, which there's been a lot of really innovative stuff put out there to do that. But that's not in any of the wearables on market. So it always concerns me a little bit to see people stimulating on the neck, especially with electricity. I would even say with ultrasound too. It's just not an ideal target. There's so much there, which is why we're in the ear.
Is that why us humans are constantly listening to music?
So there's definitely the vagus nerve actually relates to a lot of different things. There's some postulation that it does relate to listening to music, though I personally find there's a deeper connection with meditation, and that really reflects in the user experience. So for people that do listen to music to calm down and get into that meditative state, for sure. But basically everything, a decent way to think about it is that all humans are essentially a brain in a box. I hate to say it this way, but we're a brain in a box and we have certain inputs to that box and then we give certain outputs. Affecting any of those inputs is going to change our perception of reality. Music is one of those inputs that we change. What we see in front of us is something we can change. Writing, reading, speaking, hearing, everything is a different input that can change how the brain responds, how you respond to a certain output. In our case, it's a different input that we're using, an input that's typically reserved for when you are calm and rested. So by increasing the activity of that input, it gets you there. It makes you more calm and rested.
Nowadays, what activity? Yeah, okay. So you mentioned a couple of activities that do stimulate the vagus nerves, but why aren't there more companies trying to stimulate the vagus nerve to get us to calm down or to activate our brains?
Well, there are quite a few in all actuality already. And a lot of them are electrical because that's easy. It's very easy to engineer an electrical device. You can do it in 10 minutes at home. It's not going to be safe and it's not going to be tuned properly, but you can. It's not ideal though, by any means. And you're not getting proper stimulation. That's a controversial thing to say, but you're not really getting proper stimulation with that. Another reason that there's not nearly as many out there is that you typically need a good amount of subject matter expertise to put together a good device, especially one that you can manufacture at scale. And frankly, the amount of people in the world that both have the interest, the willingness, expertise, and I'll also mention the ability to overcome the difficulties of traction. This technology is still really new and alien in a lot of ways, and that could scare people. And it also means that it can be very difficult to get the starting resources and capital and people together to make something like this happen. All those different factors kind of disincentivize a lot of people from coming into this industry and really make it only a few select few able to survive here and potentially thrive.
So in that box, there's the device. There's also like a cream that favors the conductivity of the waves.
So that's a good way to think about it. There is a gel that you can use in the box. It's not necessary. We actually decided one of our big engineering goals up front was to make the gel not necessary for stimulation. We hate gel, to be frank, in all its capacities for electrical stimulation, for ultrasound stimulation. It's uncomfortable, it's icky, you have to clean it out. So you can use our device without gel. but we would be remiss not to include it in the package because you can see even elevated experiences while using it. But for the base experience, you do not need it.
Right. The product, where is it built and when is it gonna be released? This year?
This year, actually, it's going to be in this quarter, probably the next few weeks. To be frank, we already are listed on Capitron. So people that are interested, feel free to head over there or to our website, zenbud.health. By the time this podcast releases, we'll probably have direct sales on that platform. It's built here in the United States. We build it ourselves because it just makes sense at this stage. Once we hit larger volumes, we probably going to have to start outsourcing things more. But right now, we're able to make it pretty cheaply here. And I say cheaply, cheaply is a very relative term. So I suppose I should say expensively, but not so much that we don't make money off of it. And we're able to really get it out to people.
Right. What price point? $500, $1,000?
$500 actually. So you hit it the first time. We originally were playing around with a price point closer to 750, but we found that the market bears 500 a lot better, and we were able to get our cost down. So we wanted to keep those same margins. So we just lowered our price as well.
And you feel confident your product is better than the other ones on Capitron?
So I will note here that there are always, this is my opinion. This is based off the research that we've done. This is based off of what we've done. But yes, frankly, a lot of the products today for this particular application, because most of the products that use electricity in order to stimulate the vagus nerve or otherwise are going to be inferior to ultrasound. That's a common, you legitimately talk to the people in the research field, which I've been doing for half a decade at this point. You'll see it. It's ultrasound is the new kid on the block. It's the new great thing for a reason. It's a lot safer. Frankly, it is a lot easier to use, a lot more comfortable, and a lot more effective in stimulation. And like one of the things that we have to do with people when they first join the company is we have them use some of the products that exist on market today. And then we have them use ours. And we actually saw this at the Consumer Electronics Show in January, which we were in Eureka Park. But consistently, people rate ours above the competition. And there is a reason for that. One big reason is comfortability. But another is that they feel the effects of the vagus nerve stimulation faster and with a higher intensity. Because again, ultrasound penetrates a lot easier. You get more energy to the nerve. You see better activation.
So after a couple minutes of use, you can notice that you're visibly calmer, more focused.
We typically see that people are visibly calmer. Some people will enter a flow state, so they'll get really deep into whatever task that's in front of them. We see that quite a bit as well. We know that for around 80% of people, it's 5 minutes or less. We do have some outliers that need more time because again, everyone's different. And frankly, anyone that's claiming that this is going to change everyone's life irrevocably is lying because it's going to change a good portion of the population's life quite a bit. Just like, for example, caffeine is great for a lot of people, and then it's just not great for some people. It's the same thing for all neurostimulation technologies, because that's kind of a fact of all medicine and all interventions of any sort.
Yeah, I had two Muses back then and found it quite annoying. It would play the storm noise, meaning that it would say that my brain was hyperactive while it was not. I was like in deep meditation. Why do you think that was?
Neurofeedback devices. So love the Muse team for what they've done. They've made a very portable headset that can read your brainwaves. We've actually bought Muse devices to measure brainwave changes with our device because it is very portable and relatively cheap, but it's not nearly accurate. The fact of the matter is it's amazing for what it is, but it's not going to get it right 100% of the time. It's not even going to really get it right 70% of the time. Neurofeedback on that scale, especially with a lot of times they'll do around the head and the back of the ears, sweat, dirt, anything that's in the way can mess with the signal. And if the signal's messed with, then you on top of that, you have software. It becomes really hard to get an accurate signal. So that's probably why you had that problem with hearing the storm noise, even when you're deep in meditation, because I didn't know you were in meditation. And on top of that, all the science regarding brainwaves is still young. It's old and young. Like most of this field, there's been some initial research done way back when, but most of the real work has been done more recently. And just because you have a certain frequency in your brain that's more prevalent when we do a fast Fourier transform, which is what brainwaves really are, doesn't necessarily mean that you are XYZ, like you'll see in a lot of the brainwave charts. It means you probably are, but not necessarily. And that's the thing. A lot of these things are not absolutes. And to treat anything as an absolute is to lie, because nothing is.
Right. Now, the production of these things seem quite complex if you want to scale it. Like, do you produce these in China?
We produce these in the United States. And part of that is to protect our intellectual property, because producing in China typically sees things get copied very quickly. That's just a typical consideration for any company. We do get some sub-assemblies made in China because we have to. Just like we get some sub-assemblies made in other places because we have to. But final assembly is made here in the United States.
How complex is it to get the cost down? And what's the balance between getting these things made at mass and R&D?
So right now, how we do it is we've actually made R&D. I suppose the best way to say this is for research and development, manufacturability should be a major component from every step of the process. If it isn't, you're making a knickknack that's never going to go anywhere, unless you intend to only sell maybe 10. And we've kept manufacturability in mind throughout the entire process. So that's actually why we're able to manufacture our ZenBud units at the scale that we can, which we'll be able to sustain the demand for at least the next 3 quarters, even if we go up to maybe 50K to 100K units a quarter. For now. Now, once we get past that, things start getting messy. We're going to have to definitely upscale production and work a little bit more on getting our COGS down for sure. So that's one thing. So we have it good enough, and we made sure to get it good enough so that we can shuffle the R&D team over to continue development and get the next generation ready, which frankly, we're already on the 4th generation of the product before our release. There's a reason for that, because we wanted to iron out a lot of the knickknacks, a lot of the problems, a lot of the kinks, and some of our very early adopters were very thankful to for giving us that feedback that helped us make those iterations. And we're going to continue making generations on that. Manufacture will be a piece of that.
How do you get all of this funded?
I funded it in large part. Bootstrapping is lovely. We did get a small grant from the university very early on. Thank you, Austin McCord, for giving RT a bunch of money and then giving some of that money to go to entrepreneurs. The big thing, though, is that for this company, we've had to bootstrap it in a lot of ways. And that's just because it's new. And we weren't ready for funding. And everyone say, oh, why don't you have the product ready first? Okay, cool. We've built it. Oh, why don't you have revenue first? Okay, cool. We have revenue. Oh, why don't you have this much revenue? Well, fine then. We might as well just scale the company ourselves. We've managed to make it past the valley of death that should have killed us by all rights without raising. And at this point, we are looking for different funding opportunities to scale faster, but we've probably skipped what would typically be a pre-seed or seed round in our development process.
Doesn't it make you feel like you need to hurry when you're looking at companies like Neuralink?
So I have a lot of respect for Neuralink. I know some of the people that originally came up with the idea. I know some of their past technical leads personally, and it's a very devoted team. Neuralink is going places, but the places it going isn't necessarily where it's marketed to go. It's a completely novel and amazing implant that is a massive improvement over the prior art for a Utah implant. Which, to think about it, take an apple, right? Now take a board with spikes in it, shove it into the apple. That's a Utah implant. What Neuralink is taking a needle and thread and going through the apple very carefully, following its capillaries. That's a lot. It's a major increase on the standard state of the art. And they've done some very impressive things with it. But it's not going to be doing a lot of the things that we can do, for example, with our technology. And it's not going to be nearly as replicable either. The problem with Neuralink and similar technologies is that they're invasive. I mean, Elon spent a lot of time to make those surgeon robots. And I shouldn't just say Elon, Neuralink has. And that's going to help with proliferation. it's still going to take time. And especially the FDA, even with their collaboration with them, is going to be a hamper in them every single step of the way because they are invasive and highly novel. And love the FDA or hate them, they exist, and they are the ones in charge of a lot of this process.
Right. And another question is, can't we do the same with waves? So project some waves in the brain, project them back so that there's a way to decode what's up in there, the thoughts, the imagery, the circuits, the electricity, and try to communicate back with other brains out there. Do you think a non-invasive approach could also be done in that case?
Non-invasive sensing with sound and ultrasound is a very, very interesting topic. It's possible. FNIRS is a lot closer to fruition. Colonel Brian Johnson working on that. But ultrasound as a potential reading methodology has been patented. A lot of things get patented around 10 years before they come out to market. We tend to find. So at some point, we'll see something like that pop up. But frankly, invasive will always have the edge in certain ways, in the fact that you don't have to worry about the giant cage that helps keep your brain alive. The skull. The skull is terrible for almost every single type of intervention. It's why we simulate a nerve that will go through a hole in the skull to your brain, as opposed to simulating your brain. Because even though you can accomplish brain stimulation with ultrasound to a very high level of fidelity, it gets very expensive. And it's definitely not usable. You end up having to be an MRI most of the time in order to use ultrasound properly to stimulate inside the brain. For reading, on the other hand, there's a lot of different ways you could work that. There are mechanical changes in neurons when they're firing through action potentials, and potentially you could do a very low intensity of ultrasound constantly pinging back. If you develop a sophisticated enough algorithm, you could read exactly what's happening in the brain. That is constant ultrasound exposure, I will note, to the entire brain, which has not been well studied for extended periods of time. So there would be some hurdles there, but it's very possible. And again, there have been patents on that. So we will see that eventually, maybe, or it'll get squashed and we'll never see it.
What in AI has helped you develop your product, and what potential features could you introduce that would be powered by AI?
So we developed a lot of our product before AI existed. This has been a rather long time coming. But AI did get big, and personally, I use it to help organize all of my the massive load of administrative paperwork that I have to go through every day, which is very nice. And it's also been very interesting finding leads, brainstorming with. It acts as a very nice brick wall. Doesn't really necessarily contribute a lot to the conversation unless you force it to. And a lot of times what it contributes is at a very base level for now, but it is very interesting. That being said, AI offerings in the near term, not a lot. I mean, we could slap AI on a closed loop system, but that's not really AI. And we do intend to introduce a closed loop system at a certain stage. That's going to be a little bit down the line for the dev path. We're focusing on some other things first that we think are going to have a higher value proposition to our users. But a closed loop system is going to be somewhere in there. And you can say a closed loop system is using AI, but it's really using an algorithm based off of what it's reading in order to affect a certain outcome. AI can be used to develop it, but a lot of times it's not on board because that's an insane amount of processing power for a very simple task.
So, what's on the roadmap once you commercialize these things? What would be the next features that you would add?
So one of the big features right now, so it's externally powered at the moment. So you have to plug it into something. We provide a battery pack, so it's pretty simple, but you can plug it into any USB outlet technically. Though we prefer the battery pack because it's portable and it's isolated, so you're not going to fry the device if there's an electrical short. That being said, we have a couple different things we want to aim for. Migrating the batteries up into the headset, that's a big one. Increasing manufacturability to get it out there more is a big one. One very recent change, and so people will start seeing this in the 4th generation, or we actually might include it in the 5th one, but is an ergonomic shape that directly fits the ear and the part of the ear. Because typically we just use a flat circular pad, which is more than sufficient. But by ergonomically shaping it to the average ear shape, it's even more effective. So that's one thing that people can look forward to. So a more comfortable experience. more convenient experience. And there is some talk of a dual ear stimulator, which we've done some very early dev work on. And there's a lot of kinks to work out with that, but that's definitely something to look forward to down the line. And then once that's done, we'll probably start hitting closed loop, which that gets into some really fun territory, but that's a lot of dev time. Because if you want to make a good, you can make a terrible closed loop system very easily. But if you want to make a really good closed loop system, it requires a lot of dev time and a lot of dev dollars.
Interesting. Where can people find out more about you, John?
So you can find out more about me and our company at zenbud.health. That's ZenBud.health. We got our website there. I'm not sure when this is airing, but if this airs soon enough, there's a pre-order button where you can get $100 off before we do full launch, which that's not going to last. So, I mean, if people get there fast enough, there you go. They will still be getting the $100 off. Because originally we were looking to do a Kickstarter campaign. We decided against it because we developed past it. We did all the dev work that we would typically want to run a Kickstarter for. So it doesn't make a lot of sense at this point.